This one? Yeah, there we go. Okay. All right. Thank you for having me in tonight to go through this presentation and update on a topic that we've discussed several times over the past few years in the development of the highway facility. Most recently in February, we came with an update on the overall building as well as the salt barn and the budget. So this is a continuation of that. So I'll hop right into it. The biggest issue, so we haven't had any scope changes so far on the project. So just to be clear, the presentation tonight represents the same salt barn replacement building with the same capacity that we originally proposed, which is larger than the capacity of the current building. That requires the demolition of the existing highway garage, which is the former main building where all the trucks were stored and the offices were. The footprint of the new building is within that. Therefore, that building has to be demolished as a part of the new salt barn install. And then per some better operational practices, EPA recommendations, and things of that nature, we've also got a standalone building that would be used for heavy washout of the trucks to improve water quality from the site involved in here. The plans have now been brought to 100% to date, but the last time the cost estimate was done at 60%. And these are the results. This number is larger than we had discussed previously. As we continued the design of the project and brought it to this point, the complexities of the project stemmed larger costs than I had originally estimated using some generic pricing. So here you see the salt barn at the 1.9, the truck washout building at the 1.6. We're carrying an incidental budget for the project that covers design, insurances, legal fees, things of that nature. There's the demolition of the existing building at $950,000. Paving and utilities as its own line, much larger than we expected at $1.4 million. We're carrying a construction contingency on the project of $350,000. And then within this presentation, we'll show you what I believe are possible cost savings to help reduce the overall cost of the project for a total of $2 million to make the current estimated cost at the end of the day at 4.7 and change. So I mentioned the cost savings of around $2 million. This outlines what those are. We have applied for a grant from the state in relation to the water quality from the site for $600,000. We should have the results of that in the middle of December, so hopefully about a month from now. We've identified that within the current state CHIPS funding that we already receive, storage buildings of this nature are eligible for those dollars. We've reviewed our current budgets and where we stand, and we believe that we could allocate $300,000 from that funding source to this project. We have an alternate built into the bid to utilize timber frame push walls within the salt barn where they're currently concrete. The concrete has a slightly longer life, but isn't deficient in any other way. So that would be a cost savings that we could consider at bid time. Then self-performance is probably the biggest area. That paving and utility number that I had in the last slide at 1.4 million, a lot of the activities within that are stuff that our highway department has the skills to do, that we do for the county for revenue every year, and that we do on our own roads. So if we were to self-perform that portion of the project, we could potentially save up to $825,000 based on my calculations of that 1.4. Last line item there is competitive bidding. That's the biggest factor in this. Is all of these estimates are designed to be conservative, and when you get in a good competitive bidding situation with contractors that are looking for work, those numbers could be drastically lower than we're estimating currently. So the next slide, I did a side-by-side comparison of what was presented in February of this year. You'll see that we had numbers for the salt barn, truck wash building, and incidentals that totaled a little over $3 million at that time. As I said earlier, those were based on generic per square foot prices. So if you take the square feet of the salt barn and the wash bay to the tune of however many $100 per square foot, that was the extent of the specifics that were put into these budgets. They were intended to be conservative, but obviously now that we've gotten the specifics of the design pretty well complete, they have proven not to be. There's a lot more complexity, especially to the exterior of the buildings with the utilities than we had expected, which increases the price significantly from what we thought then. The other point of clarity, which I already kind of touched on, is that the expectation of change from 60% to the 100% plans that currently exist. I reached out to our consultant today, and they said it should be little, if none. We've seen in the past that when we go from 60 to 100, sometimes things come down because several questions get answered about the design, so they're able to be a little less conservative on things. So we believe the figures here are still representative of the 100% plans as well as the 60% plans. So when we put this in totality for the project, as we talked about before, this portion of the project was originally included in the bond resolution and the intent for the project. It was removed for cost savings purposes early on and never bid. So if you look at the current bond resolution and the amounts against it, we're around 21 million for the highway building and additions to Cliff Jones. The remainder of the numbers there are the 60% estimates that were presented earlier for the salt barn, washout, demo, paving utilities, construction contingency, incidentals, and the identified cost savings. So this projects that doing this project with the budget shown here, we would still end up roughly 1.8 million under the current approved bond amount for the project as a total. So key factors to consider as I was going through this and looking at the parameters and different strategies we might be able to take to make sure we keep the costs as minimal as possible. The existing salt storage building currently lacks capacity. It's nearing the end of its useful life and has structural issues. Failure of the structure will immediately threaten our ability to maintain the safe travel of the roads. That's why we're here discussing its replacement before it actually collapses or has a structural failure versus structural concerns. And then the capacity issue, was shown full bore last year with the salt shortage. That the amount we keep on hand can typically be replenished throughout the year. We currently hold roughly half what it takes to do an entire season. So we would like to increase that so it is more like much closer to an entire year's worth. That would minimize the risk of when there's high demand for salt, us needing those deliveries. Right now we rely heavily on those to make sure we make it through the entire winter without the supply running low. Having increased capacity in the building would eliminate a lot of that risk. The cost estimates are intended to be conservative. Competitive bids may be much lower than the cost shown here. That's always the hope. And then the last note here is that the wash building is a key component of the grant application. So some of the ways we look at cost savings and strategy would be to phase out certain parts of this project to not spend as much up front and space that out over a longer period of time as budgets allow. We would have to, if we were to be awarded the grant that we've applied for this, because the wash building is a part of that grant application, we would have to coordinate with the agency that is providing the grant to make sure that we would still qualify if we tried to phase the wash building out of the project to make sure that didn't impact any grant award that we might have received. So the next steps here are pretty straightforward. We're in a place now that we could put out an advertisement to bid the current plan and spec package that we have. Once that was done, we would analyze those bids and we would be in a place potentially to award bids and construct. But obviously that analyzation piece is understated here. Obviously there's a lot of analysis that would have to happen to the bids. But if we don't get bids this time, we're relying solely on the estimates to determine what we think the budget for the project is. With bids coming in, we would have the information firsthand from competitive contractors, and then we could use that to guide our decision making on any awards or potential awards or restructuring of the phasing. And that is a overview of where we stand on the budget and the need for the remainder of this project. So I'm open to any questions or comments from the board.
So first I did, excuse me. I want to thank you, Pat, for the amount of time that you gave me with all the questions that I had, the concerns I had, and also giving me a tour of the salt barn. And I agree that we definitely need to do something with that salt barn for sure. It's in a state of deterioration. Even some of the new supports and the gusset plates, you can see that the bolts have already started to rust. So the presentation that you gave me, it was, I think the total was like 6.8 million, which, I
Yep.
almost fell out of my chair when I was there because it obviously doubled. And my concern was, we're sending this entire project out as one project, where to me, and I'm just speaking for myself, obviously, it makes more sense to me to send out three RFPs, one for the salt barn, one for the washout building, and then again, one for the demo. And I greatly appreciate the research and the research that you've done, especially with respect to the demo aspect of things. Okay, the information that you provided me further proves to me that we have the right person in place at the highway department. Um, but we're looking at the grant funding as a possibility and the CHIPS funding. So that's an additional possibility of an additional $1 million on the entire project, and obviously that concerns me. I do like the fact that you have the ability to self-perform, and to that extent, I was wondering, do you have the manpower and the time, given the amount of work that we would be doing for the county, to accomplish that? I don't know. That's why I'm asking.
Yep. So the reason that it would be feasible is that a lot of the key components of that work would not be critical to the structure itself going up. So therefore, I could phase it out as much as needed.
Right,
So it would be used as fill-in, and that's how we're able to self-perform on these types of projects without impacting the services that we offer.
right,
Is that the schedule becomes flexible. If any of these were absolutely critical to the foundations of the building or something like that going in, it'd be a much different case. It would have to be tied very closely to the bid. A lot of these are storm drainage piping and then paving after the fact. We can operate off of a gravel surface in a temporary condition, and that allows us to do that paving and that work when we are available to do it outside of our services. We can take it literally a day here and there and work through it to get it completed. It might take a little longer than it would a contractor, but we would be able to do it with the current manpower using that strategy to fit it into the schedule.
thanks.
Yep.
So the only other question I had is in reference to, when I took the tour, did you have an opportunity to dig down the foundation around those side supports?
We started to, yeah. The condition doesn't get drastically worse than what we noticed. There was the deterioration of the large
Right.
tieback beams. It stays pretty similar as it goes down.
Okay.
It's a little hard to tell because there was additional moisture down there. So
Right.
I think once a couple of them get dried out, we'll be able to see if the deterioration is a lot greater, but it stayed fairly similar, which in some places is up to an inch of deterioration off of those 6x12
Yeah,
timbers.
was amazed. Some of the ones that need to be replaced right now.
Yeah.
State of deterioration.
And that's the salt effect.
Right.
You don't see wood deteriorate like that in a normal condition, especially underground, but this is definitely getting to that point.
Okay.
And on that note, thank you for taking the time to discuss things with me this week. We had good conversations, a lot of good questions that, I was able to feed some of them into this presentation, and I appreciate your feedback.
I appreciate your time.
I have a couple questions. One points to Councilman Cahill's suggestion of going out for 3 RFPs, and I certainly understand why you think that could be a possibility and a good idea. Would we be prepared to do that with what we have in our hands, or would there be an additional cost before we could go out for those 3?
There would be some additional effort to sort of reorganize the documents that we already have. So we have all the documents that we need, but there'd have to be some renumbering, reorganization to make them 3 separate packages instead of 1. So you'd have to have additional cover pages and stuff like that. So there would be some effort from a consultant to create 3 bid packages instead of 1 in order to organize it that way from where we stand today. Yes.
Okay. My next question really goes to Paul. Is there anything in fund balance that we could use to offset the cost of this?
Well, The building is a general fund expense. There is surplus in the general fund. You could use appropriate fund balance.
If we were to look at doing that, would we still be staying within the fund balance policy?
Yeah, well, as of right now, the general townwide fund is within the fund balance policy. I think it's about 44%, something like that. But our goal is to keep it between 15 and 50% of annual expenditures, so
Okay,
there is some room there.
thank you.
Jennifer?
What is the cost, and can you share an estimate of the cost to break apart those bid documents if we decided to go in that direction?
I haven't requested any estimates on that at this time. It would be tough for me to speculate. Unfortunately, some of my generalities that I've used on this have already proven to not be, so I don't really want to go down that path again. I don't think it would be a large amount. It would take a little bit of time, given we're near the end of the year. I think the time aspect would change the dynamics of how this comes about. I don't think it would be a substantial amount, but it's hard to speculate these days. Some of the fees that these consultants are needing now to do the work has gotten a little bit beyond my ability to generalize.
Yeah.
So I think it would be
That's
minimal,
fair.
but it's hard to say without asking. Certainly something I could find out.
To Jennifer's question, and it's a great question, Jennifer. How long do you think it would take you to get information from whatever consultants have formulated the existing drawings, which are saying now are at 100%, correct?
Yeah, yep. Everything's at 100%. The bid package and this, we just have to finalize the dates for the bid based on what happens here tonight. I would say within a week, we should be able to get an estimate from our current designer for that effort.
And who is your current designer?
We're currently still working with MRB that did the main building.
They're not the ones that put the cost estimate together. That was
Nope, we utilized Campus Construction
Okay.
to do the cost estimate. MRB hasn't done any cost estimating for construction on either of the projects. Technically, it was Campus Construction that developed the numbers you see here based on their most recent bids and their estimating department.
I know that the building is deteriorating and we need to get it fixed. How long can we push this project out to see when we can get the grants so we can do the finalizing, number and go ahead with the construction and stuff?
So I've estimated the building may have as many as 5 to 10 years left, but it's a big range. I think as a part of this process, I do want to get a full structural analysis from a PE. Again, we have to do an RFP for those professional services to get a structural analysis. I did reach out to a couple of contacts I have to get an idea. I haven't heard back from them. I was hoping to before tonight. So I don't know exactly how long the actual structure will stay up, which is kind of what we're discussing here. But the grant aspect, we'll know whether or not we receive the grant in about a month. Estimated sometime in December is when those awards typically come out. So we would know sometime next month if that grant was awarded at this time. But as far as the overall length of the building, again, I'm speculating. I'm not a structural engineer. I just see some of the components that Councilman Cahill mentioned in bad shape, and I know that it's not as long as we would hope.
And I just have one more question. And if we were to go out to bid for the whole thing, to move this forward, should the bids come in wildly higher than what we're anticipating or an amount we're uncomfortable with, we don't have to award that bid, is that correct?
That's correct. All of our documents state very clearly that we can reject any and all bids that come in. We're at no obligation to award any bids we receive.
Well, we're a little bit behind, but Patty, actually, you did that nice and succinct because I have three, I don't know if they're questions, but one is that you have this structured for resolution at the regular board meeting tonight to put it out to bid, advertise it by the 12th. 30 days, the bids got to come in sealed. We'd open the sealed bids and have them back here to discuss at a workshop on December 18th and whatever. Is that accurate?
That's,
Okay.
yes, that's.
We
the
will
current
not be able to
plan.
hit that time frame if we decide to split these up and go back to and pay more money and all that to split up to 3 different RFPs.
The time frame would change, yes.
Paul, second out of 3 things. How much more money will the town be spending to put this out to bid if we did this resolution tonight?
How much more if we put it out to?
How much more does it cost us to do a resolution saying, let's put it out to bid?
Oh, it doesn't cost anything.
That's correct.
I mean, I'd rather find out the answer.
All right. And to Patty's point, my third thing is that I appreciate speculation and all that, but I'd like to see at a workshop on the 18th of December, did the bids come in low? And then even if the board says at that time, I don't care that they're low. I still got concerns about grants. Maybe we didn't get awarded the $600,000 from WQIP. We have no obligation to accept it. Grant comes in high, and now all of a sudden that means we'd have to go to amending the bond resolution. Well, I can tell you we're going to shut that bad boy down, and that'll be kicked to the next board in January to see what they want to do. Or the bids come in exact. But the beautiful part about that is that we have actual things to sit there and look at on the 18th. And Pat, you'd be back here in that scenario doing a presentation, probably with Paul, maybe also with Kyle from a legal standpoint on bonding and all that. But I can safely guess that this configuration of a board, if the bids come back higher, well, then it's dead. Or the next board in January decides, why don't we go back to this and split it up into 3 components? Which I don't know if that's possible to do if we also find out on the 18th we got awarded the 600 WQIP. But a lot of that speculation and if-thens would kind of be known if we put this out to bid and get the sealed bids back on the 12th and come back on the 18th of December. So just food for thought as we get to that resolution at the next meeting.